In the heart of West Africa, a whisper turned into a storm. A handful of French intelligence officers, men who usually operated in the shadows, were suddenly captured in Burkina Faso. The news spread quietly at first, then erupted across diplomatic circles like a shockwave. Paris denied everything. Ouagadougou stayed silent. But everyone watching Africa's Sahel region knew what this meant. The empire's grip had finally slipped. For decades, France's shadow stretched across the Sahel from Mali to Niger, deep into Burkina Faso, shaping governments, funding militaries, and pulling invisible strings. But now, that shadow was fading, and one man stood at the center of the change: Captain Ibrahim Traoré. Young, defiant, and unyielding, he became the symbol of a continent rewriting its rules. It began, as most intelligence stories do, in silence. A checkpoint outside Ouagadougou, a routine inspection, a few men claiming to be security consultants. Their papers didn't match. Their destination didn't make sense. Within hours, they were detained, transferred to a secure military compound, and interrogated under heavy guard. Inside France's Directorate General for External Security, the DGSE alarms rang quietly. Several operatives were missing, last seen in hostile territory. The problem wasn't just that they'd been caught, it was who had caught them. A government that no longer trusted France, and perhaps no longer feared it. In Paris, officials scrambled for answers. Were the agents on a sanctioned mission? Had they crossed a red line? Or worse, had they been discovered spying on Burkina Faso's new alliances? The questions piled up faster than the answers. For nearly 60 years, France had ruled the Sahel not through armies but through influence. It trained African officers, financed development, and stationed troops for counter-terrorism. The arrangement suited both sides until resentment grew louder than gratitude. That fragile balance shattered when Captain Traoré seized power in 2022. He spoke of liberation, sovereignty, and the end of what he called foreign arrogance. Within months, French troops were expelled, the ambassador recalled, and Russian instructors appeared in their place. The old order was crumbling. And now, with French intelligence officers under arrest, the message was unmistakable. Burkina Faso was no longer under anyone's shadow. Inside DGSE headquarters on Boulevard Mortier, Paris, the mood was grim but methodical. Maps of Burkina Faso covered the walls, airfields, radar zones, escape corridors. A daring plan emerged. A helicopter extraction, swift and silent, to bring the captured agents home. It was codenamed after a desert bird, a creature that flies unseen and vanishes without trace. But the operation's simplicity on paper masked impossible complexity on the ground. The Sahel's thin air, unpredictable winds, and vast terrain made precision flight nearly suicidal. Every kilometer of Burkinabe airspace was now politically radioactive. Still, the DGSE ran simulations, flight routes, and fuel calculations down to the milliliter. 3 helicopters, 1 decoy, a refueling aircraft in midair, all under the cover of darkness. The kind of mission that would make or break reputations. Then the plan leaked. From Ouagadougou came a single thunderous warning. Any foreign aircraft entering their airspace without authorization would be treated as hostile and shot down. The words came directly from Captain Ibrahim Traoré himself. In a single sentence, he turned a rescue operation into a geopolitical gamble. Within France's intelligence circles, memories of past missions haunted every briefing. The Entebbe raid of 1,976 Israel rescuing hostages in Uganda was still studied as legend. Precision, courage, success. But so was Operation Eagle Claw, America's failed attempt to save hostages in Iran, where sandstorms and engine failures left helicopters burning in the desert. France had its own scars. In 2013, a botched raid in Somalia ended with 2 soldiers dead and 1 hostage executed. Every commander in that Paris war room knew one mistake could redefine the nation's image across Africa, because in the Sahel, perception was power. A failed rescue would make Traoré a hero across the continent and paint France as a desperate relic of empire. Doing nothing, however, would expose weakness the unthinkable for a nation that once dictated Africa's fate. The DGSE had to decide which humiliation hurt less. As plans advanced, France's leadership fractured. Generals pushed for action. Diplomats urged caution. President Emmanuel Macron's advisors were divided. One side argued that to abandon the agents would demoralize the entire intelligence community. The other warned that even a single French aircraft crossing into Burkina Faso could ignite anti-French riots across the Sahel. Behind closed doors, debate stretched into the night. Someone finally asked the question no one wanted to answer. If this fails, who will tell the nation we lost men in a country that expelled us? Silence filled the room. And then the coded order came. Operations suspended until further notice. The helicopters stayed grounded. The rescue that might have rewritten France's legacy never left the runway. Officially, Paris denied any operation was ever planned. Unofficially, within the DGSE, the mood was heavy. It wasn't defeat. They felt it was something worse, irrelevance. For the first time, France had been warned by a former colony and had obeyed. The empire that once commanded skies over Africa now sought permission to breathe in them. Across diplomatic circles, the message spread faster than any aircraft could fly. France had blinked. To its allies, it was a moment of quiet disbelief. If Paris won't defend its spies, one European attaché muttered, who will it defend? For the DGSE veterans who'd spent decades operating in the Sahel, this was the end of an era. Power, they realized, doesn't die in explosions, it dies in hesitation. In Ouagadougou, Ibrahim Traoré watched the storm unfold with calm precision. He didn't shout, didn't taunt, didn't gloat. He simply reminded the world what sovereignty meant. We are not against France, he said. We are against submission. Our skies, our soil, our people, they are not for rent. Those words echoed far beyond Burkina Faso. From Bamako to Niamey, from Dakar to Douala, a generation listened. For them, Traoré wasn't just a captain, he was a symbol that Africa's independence wasn't a date in history books, it was a living declaration. Murals appeared on city walls, his fist raised beside the words, "Our land, our sky, our future." Crowds rallied beneath the flag, chanting his name. And in that defiance, the continent saw something it hadn't felt in decades: dignity. France's silence had done what weapons never could. It turned a soldier into a legend. While the world watched France retreat, another nation quietly moved in Morocco. Rabat had both access and respect in Ouagadougou. Many Burkinabe officers, including Traoré himself, had trained in Moroccan academies. Behind polite handshakes and bilateral visits, Moroccan intelligence, the DGED, opened a discreet channel. Paris saw an opening. President Macron reached out to King Mohammed VI, reaffirming France's support on issues like Western Sahara. In return, Morocco began quiet mediation. Weeks later, in the stillness of a Burkinabe night, a Moroccan jet landed in Ouagadougou under diplomatic clearance. The detained French officers were quietly escorted aboard not to Paris, but to Casablanca. There, they underwent evaluation before being reunited with their families. No press release, no headlines, just silence and gratitude. But everyone inside the intelligence world understood what had happened. France got its men back. Morocco got the credit. The balance of influence had shifted from the old empire to a new broker of African power. The agents returned home alive. But the aura surrounding France's presence in Africa did not return with them. Across the Sahel, one truth had crystallized. The age of unilateral French command was over. Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, each had drawn a line, and Ibrahim Traoré had become the face of that movement, not because of weapons or wars, but because he forced a superpower to hesitate. In Paris, old hands of the DGSE whispered that what France lost in that silence was far greater than a mission. It was its myth, the idea that it could act first and explain later. That myth died the night the helicopter stayed grounded. In Rabat, Moroccan officials toasted quietly. They had achieved what France once prided itself on: solving Africa's problems through influence, not invasion. Across Africa's capitals, leaders took note. Power no longer flowed north, it flowed sideways. Months later, as stability returned to Ouagadougou, a Burkinabe journalist wrote, "This was not the defeat of France, it was the birth of a new Africa." He wasn't exaggerating. For the first time, a young African leader had faced down a global power and won without firing a shot. Traore's calm defiance had redrawn the map, not of territory, but of respect. In Paris, the silence lingers still. Diplomats talk of rebuilding trust. Generals speak of strategic patience. But the truth is simpler. When one nation hesitated, another believed. And belief in geopolitics is the most powerful weapon of all. Because strength isn't always shown by those who act, but by those who can afford to wait. The story of the captured agents and the rescue that never took flight isn't just a tale of espionage, it's a mirror, a reflection of how power shifts quietly, from empires to equals, from command to conviction. And somewhere in that silence, Africa found its voice again. So what do you think, viewers? Was France wise to step back, or did it surrender a legacy built over generations?